Hi, this recording is covering the 30-hour funding and the eligibility checker. If you are at a school, there's a few different things that you do a little bit differently. So check the video specifically for the extended hours for schools. If you are a childminder or a private or independent, private voluntary independent nursery, this is fine. We'll go through the 30 hours now. So we're just going to go back to the portal page. You've logged on. Again, across the tabs at the top, we're going to go to funding. Now, I last was doing 2-year-old, so it says actual summer 2-year-old funding. We don't want to do that because we're going to do the 30 hours. So we go to change, click on the summer tab. Again, we're under actuals. And we're going to choose fee because we're doing the 30 hours entitlement. So that's for our 3 and 4-year-olds, which comes under the fee heading. So I have my child from the previous term who's attended. We're just going to leave that for a minute and then do the eligibility checker. So I meant to mention that before. First, so you've got this eligibility checker. So this you can use at any time. So if you want to check the codes, the 30-hour codes for children that are perhaps you're expecting to start next term, or if you have a parent come to you and say, oh, can you take my child? I do have a 30-hour code. You can have a look at it to see if it is actually valid to use. So you click on the 30-hour childcare button, and here you put in you need to do the asterisk bits again. So you need to put in the eligibility code, the child's date of birth, the parent's national insurance number, and that you have consent to actually check for the eligibility. Again, that consent should be on your parent agreement form, so make sure you get it ahead of time. Then you will submit it. I'm not going to actually put in a eligibility code because that would be somebody's personal details and I can't put that in. But that's how you check the code. So when you check it, you're going to get 3 dates. You're going to get a start date, you're going to get an end date, and you're going to get a grace period date. Now, it's important you have a look at these very closely because you might get a green tick that says the code is valid, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you can use it for the term that you want to use it for. I know that sounds a little confusing. You have to be really careful and you need to look at those dates. That's the most important thing. So for example, if you're checking a code for an autumn term, so the autumn term funding term date starts the 1st of September, finishes on the 31st of December. So when you're checking for a code, it must have a start date of the previous term. So it needs to be the 31st of August or earlier. If it has a start date of the 1st of September or later, for the autumn term, you're not going to be able to use it. Parents need to have a start date before the beginning of term. Even if it's a day or two into the term, you won't be able to use it. If you start your setting on, for example, the 9th of September, and they get their code on the 4th of September, you still cannot use it because the funding term starts on the 1st of September. So it's before the beginning of the funding term. So it's really important that we encourage parents to apply for those codes well in advance, because if they apply them, they can use them, but from the term after they apply for them. So they need it to do it before the beginning of term. Also has to be the term after their birthday. So they will need to have already been 3 before the beginning of term in order to use their code. It will also have an end date. So the end date can be any time after the beginning of term. So for example, if we're talking about the autumn term again, So start date of the funding term is the 1st of September. They could have a start date maybe of sometime in June when they applied for it. They could then have an end date of the 10th of September. But that means it was valid on the 1st of September. So even though the end date is partway through the term, they can still use that code as long as it was valid on the first day of the funding term. And they can use it for the rest of the term. So the grace period is also there. If a child is in their grace period and they're new to your setting, you won't be able to use the code. So if they come to you and it is after the end date, but the child is still in their grace period, you will not be able to use the code if it's a new child for you. The grace period is only for existing children, so children that are already attending as funded 30-hour children in your setting. So the grace period is there. So if the parent's circumstances change, for example, they lose their job, it gives them time to find a job and their childcare not to be disrupted. So you can use a grace period for existing children, not for new children. Okay, I'm just going to go back to the portal now. If you have any questions about the grace periods, the date, so forth, do get in touch with us. So again, here we were checking the eligibility code. So you can do that at any point. Let's go back to submitting the 30 hours. So we got John Lane. We're going to submit for him. So his details already there because he's carried through from the previous term. We'll look through the child details. We'll mark that we checked their date of birth. Address is fine. So the parent care details, you will need to put in these details in order to check the 30-hour code. So you'll need to put in the parent's details, their date of birth, the national insurance number. Make sure you get the national insurance number that is actually associated with the code. So if it's a two-parent household, one of the parents will have applied for the 30-hour code. Make sure you got the right parent with the right national insurance number that is associated with the code. You will need to tick the box that you can check for the 30 hours. Again, that consent should be on your parent agreement form. So fill that all in. Again, I do apologize. I can't actually put in some of his details because that's private information, but we will go through it again. So we're going to put in the funding dates. Again, we do like the dates that the child has actually attended. 13 weeks. This child present during census, not nominated for a Disability Access Fund. Now, the child will be eligible for the 15 hours universal plus the 15 hours extended. It may be the case that you're sharing these hours between two settings. So perhaps it's a childminder and a school, for example. So a school nursery always takes the universal hours. So if you were sharing these hours with the school, you would put 0 for the universal hours if you're applying as a childminder. So if you're the childminder, you'd put 0 for the universal hours if they're accessing those at a school nursery. And then perhaps you are accessing the extended hours. So you would put 15 if they're with you term time only. You would put the code in here. If they're with you for the full 30 hours a week, you would put 15 universal and 15 extended. Tick this blue button here to check the code once you put the code in. If I tick it now, we'll get an error message because it's telling me what I need to provide. So I need to provide the consent to use the eligibility check and to review that. So, but if you had a code, that would go forward. Sometimes you get another error, might say the code is not valid or it's not recognized. If that happens, do double check, make sure you've put in all the details correctly. The child's date of birth, the parent's date of birth, make sure the code is correct. If it's an error, usually it's something that hasn't been inputted correctly. So you're going to put that in. Total funded hours in this case is 15 because we're only doing the extended hours. Again, as I said, if they were with you for the 30 hours, you would also put the 15 hours in the universal. You can also share these. So you might only be doing 5 of the extended hours and somebody else is doing it 10. You can share that. You put in just what you're claiming for. Tick which days they attend. And if they're paying for additional hours, pop those in there. And then add any documents or notes. Okay. Again, I can't submit this one because I haven't put the codes in. Yeah, any issues with that, with the 30 hours, just get in touch with us and let us know. We'll talk you through. But yeah, the codes is particularly looking at the dates. There are some occasions where the code was valid at the beginning of term. So say it had an end date, if we're talking about the autumn term, say for example, it had an end date of the 20th of September, but you didn't put the claim in until the 25th of September. In the meantime, the parents renewed the code, so they got a new start date. You're going to have issues putting the claim through. Get in touch with us and we'll look at the history of the code, and we will have to put the claim through manually for you, do some changes, because as long as they were valid at the beginning of term, as long as the code was valid at the beginning of the term, you still be able to use it. So we get a few issues with the codes, but any questions, get in touch with us and we will support you with that. Okay, thanks for listening. I hope you found that bit helpful. And check out our other videos if you have any other questions or get in touch with us. Thank you.